Hello, my name is Gail Seiler, and I'm honored to be here today representing Betrayal Project USA with Heidi Bond. We are a victim led organization dedicated to exposing institutional betrayal, honoring those who we lost, and pursuing justice for crimes committed under the guise of public health, namely COVID 19 and the protocols. You can learn more about our work, view victim stories, submit your story, or get involved by volunteering by visiting our website, betrayalprojectusa.org. You can also follow us on Rumble, BitChute, Spotify, YouTube, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Facebook by searching Betrayal Project USA on those platforms or going directly to our website and linking to our social media. Today, I have the privilege of interviewing Gerard Augustine, whose daughter Stephanie was killed in Indiana in an Indiana hospital due to the protocols. So, Jared, can let's start by your daughter was young. Um, let's start by telling people about Stephanie.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you both, and thank you to the Betrayal Project for allowing me to um, provide testimony for my daughter Stephanie. My name is Gerard Augustine. I'm Stephanie's dad. Um, the pictures that you're gonna be watching, you'll see Stephanie. She is um, vivacious, just bubbly. Uh, she had one of those laughs that when you heard her laugh, you laughed right with her. Um, she was very giving, um, very God centered. She was a incredible help to our family. She loved to cook, loved to bake, uh, and loved to be around children, ministering to them at church. Stephanie, when she was younger, along with her other two sisters, um, they were like the Pied Piper. They were children magnets. They young kids would just gravitate toward them in the neighborhood. Always around young kids. My wife worked when we lived in California. She worked at a church that had a daycare center, and Stephanie was always there volunteering, helping. My wife had the same daycare center in our house. Stephanie was there, always by our side, helping out, um, and just it was her gift. She just loved children, adored them, and that was what you would call, a calling, a giftedness. Um, but she didn't really look for other things to keep her busy. I mean, it just was with nieces and nephews and the kids at church. She always had kids to watch and take care of, and just encourage and be with. Um, just a beautiful soul, a dear, sweet young lady. Um, very honored to have been her dad.
That's beautiful. And I love this picture here. She says, I love being an auntie. It's the best. One day I can't wait to be a mommy and have kids of my own. But until then, I'm going to love on all my nieces and nephews. It's a
Yeah,
very sweet picture. Very
yeah.
sweet. So, at some point, um, Stephanie became sick. Well, everybody kind of in your house did.
Mhm.
And so tell us about that, about the whole process when you all got sick, and then um, the different, especially the different things that happened with you and your daughters as far as medications and things like that, how it was treated initially.
Okay. So I was first diagnosed on December 25th, 2021. I went to the ER. I was treated there for about 9 hours. Was given different medications. Very lethargic. Didn't have a lot of energy. Um, and after I was released, obviously went back home, but just did not have any energy. Just basically was in a recliner for um, every day. Just didn't have any energy. I bad headaches. Just did not feel good at all. And so my wife and myself and Stephanie and my older daughter Angelina, my younger daughter Karina, we all lived in the same household. So if if we're going by any of the known isolation protocols because of your infectious nature, you'd go back 10 to 14 days from my positive test, go back to, say, December 15th. And then if you look at the 25th, that'd be your 10 days. Stephanie, um, I took, and my oldest daughter, Angelina, took to Parkview Regional Medical Center in Fort Wayne. And they went in for severe upper respiratory, um, having trouble breathing, just, what a lot of people were experiencing. And in the ER, they were attended to by a nurse practitioner. Um, they were there for a number of hours, maybe 3. Um, I told them, make sure that you ask the doctor to give you chest x-rays and blood cultures. Make sure you get enough information. And they came out when they were done and told me that all they had gotten was a steroid injection, albuterol, and Mucinex, and in about 5 days, they would be better. And so if you look at that document that Gail's showing you, you can see that some of her vitals would be consistent with a lot of patients who were having um, low blood oxygen levels, um, and so that was kind of concerning to me, and um, discussing with my daughters, and so um, we went home. They had spirometers and they took their medication, and we had a couple of days of their medication that they were taking, and then on the morning of uh, January 1st, 2022, now um, my youngest daughter came from the bedroom upstairs, and January 1st, 2022, and my youngest daughter Karina, um, who shared a room with Stephanie, she came running downstairs, and she's just really beside herself. Stephanie's not breathing right. There's something wrong, and so we went up, try to um, get her to respond, and she was really unresponsive, breathing very shallow. So obviously we call the ambulance, get her to the ambulance, and now we take her to a hospital that's closer to us, not the trauma hospital that she went to for the original ER visit. Now she's going to Randalia Parkview Hospital, same hospital system, and I follow her from from behind the ambulance, parks, gets her in, I park my truck. I get into the lobby. I address the nurse at the desk, who I am, who my daughter is, and she says, "Okay, well, just have a seat, and we'll be with you in a minute." 7.5 hours go by. I'm every 15 minutes. I'm on the phone with my wife and my daughters, and my wife is wanting to come, and she's got to go to work, and so she's like, I'm gonna call in. I don't want to go to work, and I'm telling her, well, look, I don't know anything yet. Let me just keep in contact with you. I'm with her, and you know, every half hour, 45 minutes, just going through that 7.5 hours, they're not giving me any information. They're not telling me how she's doing. So finally, at the 7.5 hour mark, I'm starting to get frustrated. The campus police are right there in the lobby. They come over to me, and they're telling me, just hang on a second, we'll get an answer for you. And then they take me to where Stephanie's at. And so they have her on a BiPAP. She's on 50 liters of oxygen at 100%. She's now lucid. She's cognizant. She's able to signal to me and just, you know, Daddy, I'm glad you're here. She grabs my hand. Standing next to her, there are like two respiratory therapists, two nurses, the attending doctor, and a lot of movement, a lot of equipment. Um, and I ask her, have they told you anything? And she's like, not really. And so the doctor takes me away from the bed and says to me that her condition is very serious, and that in order for us to stabilize her and keep her alive, we're going to have to put her on a ventilator. Well, we're at January 1st, 2022. And like a lot of people, I started following a lot of what was going on with COVID as early as February of 2020, even September 2019. And so I'm following a lot of the doctors in the country that are treating patients with various protocols. One of the ones that I found was Dr. Pierre Corey, and his group at the time was FLCCC. I know that they have a different organizational
Yeah.
and so I've got a protocol in my mind that I want them to use, and I tell them, well, let's get her on hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin and zinc and quercetin and budesonide, and just let's do what these other doctors are doing.
Yep.
And he just simply says that's not our protocol.
Not the protocol. Yep. Just not the protocol, even though it's saving hundreds of thousands of people. By that time, it had probably saved at least 500,000 people.
Yeah, there were
It saved.
just so many people, and um, the frustrating part is that there was a lot of information that was coming out about these folks that were put on ventilators that
Yep.
were not surviving, and so um, I just I had a very I just was not comfortable at all with that. I had just a real bad reaction to his decision, and
Now,
uh,
at this point, when he made the decision, so she went in on the 1st of January. When that decision was made, well, They asked her if she was vaccinated, right?
In my presence, they never said anything about that, and that's part of the problem with the 7.5 hours that I wasn't with her,
Yeah.
because when I asked her if she was okay and did they tell you anything about what they're doing, and she commented, no, they haven't really told me anything. I'm I'm listening to that, and so how do I know that they gave her informed consent?
Yeah,
How,
exactly.
how do you how do you how do you talk to somebody who's under duress medically and who doesn't have a witness, who doesn't have a family member there with them, you know, who knows what they did or didn't say to her in 7.5 hours?
And did they start giving her remdesivir? Well, did you know about remdesivir? Did she know about remdesivir?
She didn't, I did.
Yeah, you
And
did.
so um but I was more at that very moment, um like you've gathered, at least I did. I had a lot of information
Hmm.
in my head, access, was sharing that to the doctor, what I wanted her treatment to look like,
Right.
my concerns about a ventilator, and how having her on a high level of oxygen like that without even giving her any kind of treatment to reduce the severity of the cytokine effect, which we knew about because of what the other COVID doctors who were treating patients with budesonide, what they were saying, what it was doing to help mitigate the cytokine effect in the lungs, and the inflammation from the cytokine effect. So you got this stuff rambling through your head, and you're communicating to the doctor, and he tells you, well, it's not our protocol, and so now you're like, okay, what do I do? And you go from, at least I did in that situation, to where you feel like you're armed with information, but you don't have um, a an actual functional plan that would be like your backup to just say,
Yeah.
I'm taking her out of the hospital and I'm going to bring her here because I've got oxygen and I've got
Yep.
all these off-label medications that I can give her, right?
Right.
So,
Exactly.
you know, my sense was, and this is like hindsight now. So, I'm just saying to you and to the audience that, my sense of what happened, Stephanie being on Medicaid and 34 years old, we didn't have the health directive, we didn't have a power of attorney. When she crossed the threshold of that hospital, they medically kidnapped her.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I don't know, uh, medical powers of attorney, those were ignored all day, every day, especially during that time. Anyways, it's like the Prep Act gave them immunity, and when you have immunity, like I mean, they'll do what they will. So now we have seen now this form wasn't there before, but Laura Bartlett has the I do not consent form.com, which is different than a medical power of attorney. It's not directives. It is a I do not consent to these things.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it's used has been very effective. So if
Mm-hmm.
people want to check that out, they go to I do not consent form.com. But I think a lot. I think you're right. I mean, the bonuses were bigger with Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, VA, all of those different government and certain insurances. Even it
Yes.
was bigger. So, so when did they start giving her remdesivir?
So at this point, the doctor basically has me ushered out and said we're going to be taking her over to back to the main trauma hospital that she went to 4 days prior,
Mhm.
back to Parkview Regional Medical Center. and that we should call the hospital and get information and get updates for her. And so I went home and I told my wife what was happening, and we immediately went over to the other hospital.
Okay. And then
And so
they transferred her over there.
they transferred her there, and they had us wait. We were waiting probably another 3 hours, and then one of the patient advocates, not a doctor, not a nurse, a patient advocate came to
Yeah.
us and told us that Stephanie had to be placed in a medically induced coma on a ventilator, and that they were going to start treatment protocol. And
What did she say? Why Stephanie had to be put in a medically induced coma?
they told us that because of her low blood oxygen level and her need for high volume oxygen, and that's where they left it. And again, made the comment that this was the hospital's protocol. We were following the CDC's mandate recommendation for patients with COVID who were brought in, and we were told that they were going to be treating her for pneumonia, ectobacterium, and that is what they were going to be doing. To my knowledge, um, and based on her records, her treatment course was initially remdesivir. She was given ketamine, fentanyl, morphine, Ativan, antibiotics. There were like 6 or 7 drugs that they were giving her initially. And why would they give her Ativan, first of all, if they had her in coma? And they gave her paralytic medication. Um, they told us that they had to have a protocol where they were trying to help facilitate her lungs to drain. So they would have her on her back for 4 hours, and then they would turn her and put her on her stomach for 16 hours. And they would go through this protocol for the first period of days that she was with the first of 7 doctors. Each had a different view of her illness and how to treat. There wasn't any consistency. The first doctor, he was very adamant about getting her off the ventilator. That was his goal. He verbalized it to us. He wanted her off the ventilator. He told us that the longer she's on the ventilator, the harder it's going to be to get her off. We need to get her off the ventilator, get her on a trach tube, start doing physical therapy, get her lungs stronger. And that was what he wanted. And that gave us hope because we believed that this guy had a plan. It was, she's not going to be on a ventilator. We need to get her off and get her back to health. And so this particular doctor was very accessible. He would text us if he couldn't talk. He would let a nurse know if he was making rounds or had to be with other patients. You know, let the Augustines know, hey, I'm going to get back with him as soon as I can. He came up with a plan, wanted her off the ventilator. and that he was looking to get to a window where she was at 100% oxygen, 50 liters. He wanted to try to get her down to 75, 80%. And we got to that point, and he said, you know, I really encourage you guys. We need to get her off the ventilator, and we need to do it now.
Yeah.
And so we agreed, and so that was um, that was early morning. They made the transition. It was about 5 6 hours after the medication wore off, and um, he called us and said that she tolerated coming off the ventilator. She's breathing on a high flow cannula. Um, she was at 75% uh, oxygen, um, and I believe at that point she was at like 40 liters. So now we're starting to like think, okay, she's going to pull out of this, and so
So
they're
yeah,
not letting us see her at this point. We can't be with her.
still right.
We're isolated still.
And how many days was she in the hospital at this point?
She would have been there probably about 6 days.
Okay, 6 days. Oh, so okay, so they put her on, and he got her off real quick.
Yeah,
Was that when she made the video?
yeah, that was when she made the video.
Okay, so well, I'm gonna play the video, and then we'll talk about this period of time in the hospital and her how she was. I mean, you guys will have to turn up your speakers because she when people come off the vent, they're very soft, and and so I'm gonna go ahead and play this. It's gonna mute us all while it does it. Okay. Church friends, I just want to say that I heard your prayers very clearly, and I felt every single one. I miss you all, and I can't wait to go to church and see everyone again soon. I miss you all so much, and I can't wait to give everyone a hug from the bottom of my heart to show gratitude and love. So thank you for your prayers. We'll see you all soon again.
Hmm.
Very sweet. Basically, if people couldn't hear her, she was thanking her church family for their prayers and saying she felt every one of them, and that she had gratitude, and um, very sweet, very sweet. She looked so to me. I mean, she has just the high. She went from a vent just to the high flow cannula, not even a rebreather, and she's doing pretty good when she's speaking. I mean, that's pretty strong for what she had just been through. Um, so what did they give you? Well, I know that they didn't give you a lot of information, didn't give her information, but so she's gotten the remdesivir, she's been on the vent. What happens? So this is the first 6 days, and she was in there over 30 days. So what happens from this point? So I mean, because she looks like she's doing pretty good.
Right. So, you know, um, I start asking the doctor, okay, now that she's alert, cognizant, you're talking with her, and I said, let's start the other protocol. I'm like, what do we have to lose?
Right.
You guys are telling me that you want her on a ventilator and remdesivir. Now she's off the ventilator. What is it possibly going to hurt her to do
Yeah.
what we're asking? That's not our protocol. Why can't you do what we're asking?
Right.
It's not our protocol. We've got a responsibility to the patient, and just a lot of medical jargon that
Talk.
is designed, I believe, to cause you to um, feel the need to trust their
Right.
integrity, their knowledge. The hospital is there to help your loved one. Don't question us. I didn't hear anything from the doctor that day, because this is the only doctor that, in our opinion, of the seven, that really cared about Stephanie and had a plan. And he had the window to do something that, if he had chosen to say,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm just going to go for it, and there's other doctors that are using these off-label medications, and
Exactly.
let's just try it. But all I heard was her lungs are very emaciated. She's got not much lung volume. Her lungs are just very weak. They're just painting this picture of it. It's not going to make much of a difference at this point.
It's interesting that they don't want to use ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine off-label medications. Yet remdesivir was created for Ebola. It wasn't created for COVID, so wasn't it off-label? I mean, ivermectin was on the CDC website. It was covered by the PrEP Act, just like remdesivir was. The only difference was a $3,500 bonus per dose
Right.
for the remdesivir.
Yeah. And so, you know, you you asking these questions to the doctors, and like you said, you've got medications that are on the WHO safe drug list for all these years.
Hmm.
Nobody's died from hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin. You
Right.
know, we're sharing what we've been hearing from other doctors around the country that are treating their patients, who, when Stephanie went into the hospital, there were other patients that were far worse than our daughter was that recovered. And so, in our mind, she's now awake. Give her a chance. Do it. What?
Yeah,
It's not going
exactly.
to hurt. And just the complete um I'm trying to think of how to describe the level of just very obtuse. Not
Yeah.
like, you know we should consider this. It was just very strict. This is our protocol. We're following the CDC's
Whether it
protocol.
makes,
That's
yeah.
what they want to do. And like you said, Gail, you've got Anthony Fauci from the NIH that funded a study on remdesivir for Ebola patients in Africa. It was called the PALM study. They
Hmm.
had remdesivir, monoclonal therapies, and two other drugs. They pulled remdesivir and one of the other drugs because the mortality rate was greater for remdesivir and the other drug than the Ebola virus was.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
think of that. You're giving these patients that have Ebola a drug that's supposedly going to help them recover, and it's killing them.
Right.
So
Exactly.
now you've got the data. So Fauci's got that information. He knows this drug is killing these patients. Yet they now go ahead and they decide they're going to mandate this toxic drug. So what does remdesivir do? Well, what it does is it causes renal failure,
Yeah.
causes your body's fluids to just go all through your body into your lungs, and so the patient basically drowns.
Yeah. And
And
it causes actually, and it affects the heart, it affects the kidneys, it affects
yeah,
so many,
yeah,
it has so many black
yeah.
box warnings.
So you have evidence with the study that they funded, and then they turn around and they mandate this drug as the only treatment. And so, to give context, the FDA was allowing hospitals to use hydroxychloroquine and zinc before the emergency use mandate started in mid-March. So you've got January, February, mid-March, where it was allowed. The FDA was saying, "Yeah, doctors, go ahead, do use the hydroxychloroquine, use the zinc." As soon as the emergency use authorization started, they stopped it, and only remdesivir was the protocol and treatment
Yeah,
that
that's
people
right.
provided.
Because hydroxychloroquine negates some of the effects of remdesivir. It it actually negates some of the bad effects of remdesivir, and they used hydroxychloroquine to make it look like remdesivir was working so that they could get the FDA approval for remdesivir, and then they took away the hydroxychloroquine, and then people started dying at a higher rate because it was all remdesivir, baricitinib, tocilizumab, those types of things.
Right,
And so that's, yeah, exactly. And so by the time, just so people kind of get a concept here of time, this was, she went in on January 1st, 2022. That was the Biden declared winter of death, pandemic of the unvaccinated, where it was going to be a dark, dark winter. He called it. He called it when he did the mandate and made it happen. I mean, he said it in July and he made it happen by September all the way through probably about April the next, so September of 2021 all the way to April of 2022.
right.
It was, this was very at a level that I call very cruel. So during the time that so now she's out of the induced coma. How long was she out of that chemically induced coma and off the vent?
As soon as the doctor ordered her off the vent, she was off the vent for probably um, 5 days.
5 days. So during
And
during those days,
yeah,
what?
during those days, we're still isolated.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they infrequently allowed us to talk with her on FaceTime.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, they told us, we don't want you talking with her more than 10-15 minutes. She can text a little bit, but they were very controlling with our being able to just communicate with her. And um, so this whole time, from the time 70 got to Parkview Regional Medical Center, um, and they again made us wait in the lobby, I immediately started having conversations with the patient advocate office.
Mm-hmm.
They have dozens of emails, texts, phone calls from me on record about my grievances and how she was being treated, the medication that they were giving her, the fact that they would not try the FLCC's protocol. I printed off the actual protocol and brought it to the pharmacist at the hospital. And I asked the pharmacist, what problem do you have with these protocols, with budesonide? And I had a probably 12 pages printed off from PubMed about the efficacy of budesonide to go along with
Yeah.
the protocol to show them that I'm not some crackpot just listening to freaking, some podcast, that I actually did some research. And my wife and I are asking the doctors questions, right? We're not able to be there at the hospital yet, but we're asking questions. And so, you know, in my mind, it's as likely as not that the budesonide would work as well as albuterol. Well, if I compare what albuterol can do for the lungs for a patient for pneumonia and what budesonide could,
It's
there
totally
was a
different.
marked difference between the
Oh
two.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, actually, and I would even love to send this picture of this letter right here from February 4th to Dr. Bartlett, because and Laura Bartlett, because this whoever this is here, this advocate, this patient advocate, dead wrong. They're dead wrong to say that um, a, that just the steroid prednisone. First of all, they gave her a low dose, right? So like a high dose would have been like 50 milligrams of prednisone, but the to say that there was not a benefit to also providing a steroid budesonide, that inhaled steroid, it also is an antiviral. There's antiviral properties in budesonide, but the difference between not Adderall, albuterol and budesonide, one opens up the airwaves, might be good for asthma. There's nothing wrong with albuterol, but budesonide is what you use for pneumonia, and that's there's a reason they give it to um, to premature babies for their lungs, and that's how safe it is. You can give it to a preemie baby, a 1 pound baby. um, Definitely there was a benefit. They're dead wrong here.
Yeah. And a lot of the doctors that that Gail, you and I and Heidi and everybody else were probably listening to were having the same struggles as like probably the doctors at Parkview. They were trying to figure out what was it about this virus that was complicating the breathing of the patients in such a um, ferocious way, right? It
Sure,
was
I
just
I think that's true, but I also think that they knew what would work. I mean, they knew if they used budesonide, it would work. It was working across the country, and many hospitals, including the one I was in. Well, when we finally won the ability to get budesonide, it was like day 6, day 7, and the doctor saw 2 doses working, and switched it to albuterol, and it became a battle to get budesonide again.
right. Okay, so
They fight.
that's going to be the point I want to speak to because
Yeah.
my sense is that you know we know that all this was just very well thought out, right?
Hmm.
You have to have the shareholders are being, maybe they weren't uh in on the conversation about how this protocol was going to happen, but you know darn well that the hospital leadership was thinking about the shareholders because in the
Yeah.
long run, you know, irregardless of the prep act, those people are going to be impacted by the hospital's bottom line. And if the leadership starts leaking out to the doctors, hey, we've found these other doctors around the country that are using budesonide and these
Hmm.
other protocols, then I think it would have strengthened the doctors' resolve to then have a backbone and say, we're going to fight against this protocol that the CDC's initiated through the hospital. And maybe that, I always as evil and as pissed off as I am at all these people, I always try to think like, did they ever really just like consider, like, hey, I, I took a Hippocratic oath.
Yeah, like, or for the nurses, the Nightingale Pledge, right? Like,
Yeah, it's just it's so bizarre to think that you've got your loved one there. So did you want to
I also,
comment
yeah,
further on the letter?
yeah. So I also wanted to point out on this letter, the advocate always works for the hospital, and you can see if you take a good look at this letter, if people take a good look at this letter, this is CYA. This is how they do it. She pretends to investigate and then writes why the medical director is just doing a stellar job while he's actually causing the death of your daughter. And then the other thing, this letter was written on February 4th, and we're going to get to the fact that she 2 days later your daughter was dead. So um this advocate, Kelsey Schneider, she she failed to act. She failed to act in a way that would save your daughter. Same with this one here. This is another one written after your daughter died and after a meeting that you had. So we'll get to this one, but you know, the COVID, they're aware. Like, you've made them aware as much as you can make them aware, and I guarantee you, other people in this house, if somebody's out there watching this, and they went to Parkview and they had a loved one killed at Parkview in Indiana, Fort Wayne, Indiana, I need you to contact us. But the the hospital didn't continue to evaluate and adjust its policies or treatments or protocols for COVID. They're bought into it, and so um and then she's going to offer you, she's worked in patient advocate department for 10 years. Yeah, I don't, this is all just cover my butt, cover my butt, cover my butt. It's
But they're protected, the whole hospital, and the the Prep Act
yeah,
has given them license to
yeah, it's a,
practice mal legally practice negligence and malpractice.
sure, right,
and and
immunity.
and then on top of that, at the time, Governor Holcomb of Indiana had a legislative order drawn up that basically mimicked what the Prep Act said, that no hospital or no doctor and nurse providing care for a patient within medical guidelines. Okay, there's the terminology again. Medical guidelines
Yeah,
under the Prep Act. Okay, so they are able to continue treatment as long as they're fulfilling their obligation to the patient. And so the the difference in our minds is that you have an expectation when you take someone or yourself and you go to a hospital. And,
right,
if I go to the hospital and I got a gunshot wound, I know I'm going to go to trauma surgery. They're going to, you know, remove the bullet. They're going to stabilize me. I'm going to get help. You go in to be treated for pneumonia. They're going to They're going to do what they can to treat the viral aspects of the pneumonia. They're going to stabilize me. I'm going to be able to breathe after a few days, and I'll be able to get to go home. So if anybody Googles, just I would suggest anybody just do this. If you don't believe anything I'm saying, just Google prior to COVID how hospitals were treating patients with viral pneumonia
For pneumonia.
and look at the protocols that they were talking about.
That's right.
There was no initial, I'm talking about onset treatment within 72 hours. There was no ventilators. There was no remdesivir.
Right.
There was none of that.
Because it didn't make sense. It was budesonide and vitamins and move. Not even, and it wasn't the proning. The proning on your stomach wasn't even a thing. It was get up. It was move,
Move.
move.
Exactly.
Don't let it settle in your lungs. Move.
Right.
Don't let it settle in. I mean, it was because it'll stick and it'll settle in your lungs, and then it was sunlight, vitamins, get all of that. So so during the time that she was off the vent, you still weren't allowed to see her, and you had some FaceTiming with her, and text messages, but it kind of hit and miss. What was she asking? Because she wasn't getting information either. Like, they weren't really giving her information.
Right.
Were they giving her food and water? Were they?
Yes, she was being fed. She was being hydrated. We were asking her about her diet, and she was very happy about that. You know, they were giving her applesauce, and she'd have oatmeal or yogurt, and
Yeah.
she was being fed. She was getting plenty of water to hydrate. That was not an issue for her.
Right. Okay. And so so then at some point, so she was communicating with you. Was there anything concerning about anything that you saw on FaceTime, or like during these first 2 weeks? You're like, other than the fact that they would not give her uh the protocols that would have helped her, not hurt her,
Right.
just because process. So was there anything that was concerning, or anything that, was she trusting the doctors? Was she?
Yes, yeah, absolutely, and so, this current doctor that was trying to get her stabilized, you know, we we're now at the time frame where their shift is going to change. So, like I said, she had 7 doctors, so each of them was on a shift for a 7-day shift.
Yeah.
And so the doctor's explaining to us that he's going to be going off shift. The plan is that in the morning on the new doctor's shift, she's going to be put on the trach, and this is going to facilitate starting for her rehab, for her being able to talk better, to eat, just a whole litany of therapy. This is
Hmm.
the track we're going to go now, and so that night, we finished FaceTime with her, and um, we prayed like we always did. We would worship together. She would, she had her phone, and they had it plugged in, and they let her listen to sermons and worship music and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
She was telling us that they were very helpful with that. She was very complimentary of the nurses. She would ask them. She would tell me that I've asked them about when can I go home, and that was really what she wanted to know. She wasn't very interested in the level of uh, her health concerns.
Yeah.
In her mind, it's just like, okay, I'm out of the coma, I'm out of the ventilator. They told me about that. I'm going to go out and get this trach. I'm going to start therapy, and so if you knew my daughter, she's just like, I'm getting better. I'm going home. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so, you know, we're at a place where, you know, we're trying to keep her confidence up, keep her hope up, and let her know that, look, this is real serious. You got to follow what the doctor's telling you to do. You got to do your breathing exercises, and we're going to get you home as soon as we can. And so, the early in the morning at 1 o'clock, between the ending shift and the beginning shift of the next doctor, my wife and I get woken up by a phone call from the new doctor telling us that we're very sorry to tell you that Stephanie had a respiratory arrest and we had to put her back in a medically induced coma. And so we're woken up to this information, and that's not what we went to bed with. There was this whole plan in place. How did she go from tolerating at 75%, 40 liters, to now she had a respiratory event? And we never got an answer for that. I mean, I've got my own conclusions, my own theory. And so we were very abrupt with the doctor. We're very loud. We didn't curse and didn't threaten them, but we were
Yeah,
angry. And so we hang up the phone and we rush to the hospital. And so when you get to the hospital, you know, probably like every hospital that people were going to, you, the lobby doors open and there's a desk there 24
sure.
hours a day. Somebody's asking you, hey, have you been exposed to COVID? You've been around anybody that's had a vaccine? All this, you know, ridiculousness. And so we answer the questions, and then we get to the lobby desk, and like they were already expecting us to be there. And there's a safety concern when we sign in, and the campus police show up, and it's like, what's going on? Well, we were told by the charge nurse and the doctor that you guys were very violent on the phone, very abrupt.
Yeah,
And the doctor is very concerned for their life and their welfare. And we're like, what the hell do you expect from us? You wake us up at 1 o'clock in the morning. We're told one thing 4 hours earlier, and didn't you tell us that this happened, and you have no information as to why? How do you think you're going to react after isolating us all this time? Now, you know, so they tell us that we're still, because of the isolation protocols, we're still not allowed to see her. Can we put a hazmat suit on? Can we go be with her? No. So from the hospital's decision was, from your last time of contact with the patient, you had to go out 14 days for isolation period.
right.
And that made no sense to us because we all lived in the same household. I explained before, I was the first one to get sick. We were way past 14 days together as a family. So none of us are infectious anymore. And you explain this to them about our living conditions, and you know, there's no reason for us not to be able to go to be with her because we're past your own isolation protocol. And I mean, you could go to the CDC's website, the FDA, the state of Indiana, the Allen County, Indiana, the hospital. They all had a different time frame, 7, 10, 14 days. There was no consistency. So, you know, you're still, as a family member, you're like, let's just knock off the bull crap. Let us see our loved one. No. So they made us wait the 14 days. And so it was approximately the 15th of January.
That you were finally allowed to see her?
Yep. And then it was only one at a time. My wife
Right.
and I couldn't go together.
And was there a limit in the amount of time you could stay?
Uh, Not really. They suggested, you know, during visiting hours,
Yeah,
you
right.
know, and but no, they didn't really give us you can only be with her for 2 to 4 hours because she's back
Yeah.
in a coma now. And but we did have to still. This is the stupidity of this. You're you're taking gloves
Yeah.
out of a box, not sterile.
Right.
You're putting a mask on.
Yeah.
You're
Not
putting
sterile.
an eye shield on, and you're putting a gown on, and then the nurse is opening the door without gloves, and you go in to the room, and you then can go see your loved one.
Yeah.
And the nurses come in and they sanitize their hands. They open the door that's not sanitized.
Right.
They come in. They then put gloves on their hands that are not sterile gloves,
That are
just
not.
like
Yeah.
a janitor could use it, whoever, right? And so they're, you know, tweaking the machines. They're doing their job, and so my wife and I started asking a lot of questions about the equipment, what the alarms were for, what are we looking at. Started getting to see pictures of her lungs. They're explaining to us what opaciated lungs look like, what field of the X-ray is, what part of her lung is healthy, what
Mhm.
part of the alveoli, all these different aspects that we're looking at, and um, so we're now starting a routine. Um, you know, my wife and I drive together. I stay at the hospital. She goes up to visit. Then I go up to visit. So usually we were like 4 or 5 hours at a time. She'd go up. I would hang
Mhm.
downstairs. I mean, you got the lobby to hang out with. You can go hang out in the cafeteria,
Sure.
and we would just tag team. And so we were, probably there 8, 9, 10 hours together. And then finally we started getting, because I just kept pressing them that, look, Stephanie's got siblings. They want to come up here and be with her.
Let's see her.
And at first it was just no, mom and dad. And I just kept pounding them. I'm like, you guys are just so wrong with doing this stuff. And finally they relented. I don't know about other families, but they allowed us to then, let my daughters go one at a time. They did the same thing, and then my sons, and then we're going a week, another change in shift, another doctor,
Yep.
and we get to the third doctor, and this guy was an animal. He was just a piece of work,
Yep.
and very cold, very uh she's her lungs are done. There's no recovery for her. We're going to keep her comfortable. We're going to do what we can. Continue the protocol. Uh, and you're thinking to yourself like, okay, what hope does she have? What are we doing? What and so your hope and like you're trying to use logic and reason, and you're you know you're thinking to yourself, do I prepare myself? Do I keep having hope? You going back and forth with that. You know, what am I supposed to do? Am I
Right.
going to keep hoping, because they're not giving you any hope. They're just preparing you day after day after day that her lungs are not going to heal. Well, your protocol is not working, so why don't you try what we've asked?
Yeah, why don't you use something that will work?
Right.
And
And it was always the same thing. But at that point, she's now in the second induced coma, and in my mind, I'm thinking like what you were saying earlier, when she came out of the coma the first time. That was the time. That was the window that they had to at least give her the opportunity to see if she would survive by giving her those other protocols. You
yeah,
know, and so um, so we're having a lot of difficulty with this next doctor, and we're in this meeting. They're now starting to transition in their mind toward palliative care already,
yeah,
and so we get in this meeting, and they're like, we got the palliative care team, we got the patient advocates, and we got this doctor who is just reading us the riot act about, you need to be prepared, there's not more we can do. And you know I know my wife wanted to lay this guy out, and you know it's just, you know he, human nature, when you're hurting someone, you know your human instinct is to protect them.
yeah,
I mean, for God's sake, we see somebody hurting an animal,
yeah,
you want to protect the animal. I mean, this is a human being,
right,
and you know, you're you're trying to process all this stuff. Is like, we're in a hospital, and you guys are just like, you're so like calm about all this stuff. This is just like, this is how we do business now.
yeah,
And you know, I like I said, I talked to the pharmacist. I gave him the PubMed articles. We talked about that. You know, that point is gone now, right?
right,
Budesonide's not going to do anything for her, and so we're we're very much against talking about palliative care, because we're still trying to figure out ways in our mind to help her.
right,
And so our there was no real like conversation with this doctor anymore. Everything was through the charge nurse. He wouldn't even see us anymore, because he just felt like, we were just non-compliant family that wouldn't submit to his uh I don't know, what do you want to call it, just, you know bow down to me. I know what I'm talking about. You people are just grieving. You don't know what you're doing. Just listen to me. Let's move on. And that was the way it came across. It was very cold. And so we go through his 6 days, and we come to the next doctor, and this younger guy, he was actually a little bit more open toward trying some of the protocols. And so he first says, "Okay, well, let's give the budesonide a try." And so he starts dosing her full dose, nebulized, and so he's showing me the X-rays,
mm-hmm,
and he's showing me how like minute the areas of her lungs are where there's actual air. I mean, it was,
yeah. By now though, they've destroyed her.
yeah, and so it's like, it seriously was it was less than 5% of the surface area of her lungs were actually viable, right? So, um, at this point, after he does and tries for a couple of days, nothing happens. Now we're starting to see some deficits to Stephanie's care accelerate.
Yeah.
She, because of their turning her, um, they in their turning her, the tube into her throat was cutting her trachea. So they're telling us what was happening because we're seeing blood, and they're explaining to us, well, this happens when we turn patients. And we were in there when they were turning her, and they had uh, enough people to turn her, and they were turning her carefully. I did not observe
Hmm.
like abuse when they were turning her,
Right.
right? But they did explain that in our turning, this does happen. Okay, well, so you have that is happening to her throat. Then my wife is in the room on several occasions, and her oxygen level alarms are going off
Hmm.
for more than 5, 10, 15 minutes. No nurse shows up. She's out in the hallway knocking on the desk, trying to get people's attention. And you know how it was going on for the nurses at that time. They had like 5 to 7 patients that were in the ICU on a ventilator. They had a lot of people to take care of. Under normal circumstances, outside of COVID, they might have only had 2 patients. But now they got all these people. And so they can't just come to you quickly. So, you're hitting an alarm, you're letting other nurses know, um, and finally get the nurse's attention to come in. And it's not always a low oxygen alarm. Sometimes they're giving
Yeah.
medication, the bag gets low, the alarm
Right.
goes off. So they explain because you're asking questions. And so my wife asked the nurse, what is it? She's on oxygen. It's a low alarm. Why are you guys not in here to take care of it? Oh, the alarms go off. It happens. Okay. That would have been acceptable if you're talking about maybe the ketamine or the fentanyl,
Right.
the medications getting low. But the oxygen, I mean, that's why you got to run a ventilator, is the ventilator's breathing for her.
That's right.
So
Right.
they um, they have the injuries with her throat, the oxygen low level alarms. Then the next thing happens. I come in my visit, and I went to college, went to train for Surge Tech, passed my national certification, understand sterile processing. So, I'm obviously, I'm having a problem with this. We're picking out these latex gloves that everybody's dragging and coming in and out of the room and
Yeah,
stuff.
exactly.
And so the nurse is saying, okay, we got to change your catheter. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm just rewinding in my head my training. Okay, we're gonna drape the lower half of her body. We're gonna take a sterile catheter bag
Yeah.
that's ready to be opened
Right.
by a nurse, and that nurse is going to open a package of sterile gloves. As the nurse who's going to have her hands who've been clean, she's going to take the sterile gloves out, put them on, and then the other nurse is going to open the package of the sterile catheter. That nurse then takes those sterile gloves that her hands are wrapped in, and
Hmm.
she's
Yep.
going to place the new catheter in Stephanie and take the old one out. Okay. That's not what they did. They didn't drape her. They took the gloves from the freaking latex box. They take the catheter out, put the new catheter in. She winds up getting not one infection, not
Yeah.
2 infections, 3 infections, and sepsis.
That's right. That's exactly what happens is that then they get those hospital acquired infections because of poor care and just any tube you have in you.
But that's the nature of a hospital.
Yeah,
You got
exactly.
all this
Yeah,
germs moving
right,
around. Okay, you would want to think that they're going to take necessary precaution as best they
yeah,
can, right?
exactly.
I mean, they have a pressure sealed door for the patient,
Yeah,
but out in the hallway, it's open and exposed. So when they open the door, well, there's germs not coming in through the doorway too. So
right.
just there's just all this stuff that you're like paying attention to, the equipment, the process, the way that they're caring for, just all of these different things. And so then we're getting down to the last final doctor, the seventh doctor, and the nurses are, for the most part, the nurses just kept encouraging us. They were just saying, we're trying to make Stephanie as comfortable as possible. Um, I I can say that we had, other than a couple of nurses who were a little bit indifferent. I'll just
Mhm.
speak for myself. I personally had the sense that the nurses that were caring for Stephanie um, were were very genuine in their approach
Mhm.
toward her care. That a few of them were actually Christians, and
Yeah.
even the ones that weren't Christians, um, we would ask them questions about, like, you guys are in here on shifts and you're taking care of our daughter, and what do you do when we're not here? And they're like, almost every one of them, they would be like, when they would come in, you know, they would model for us and show us what they actually do, and
Yeah.
we would just be quiet and watch, and they would actually just they would talk to Stephanie as if she was awake,
Sure. Oh, that's good.
and um, you know, whether it was bathing time, or to flip her, or to change her medication or catheter, or whatever they were doing, come into the room, check the alarms. Hey, Stephanie, you know, it's Gwen. I'm in the room now, girl. I'm just checking on your meds. I'm making sure that everything is okay. We're taking good care of you. I want you to know that your mom and dad are here with you. Your brothers and sisters. We're on top of everything. Just
That's why it's good when family's there because I mean they may some of these nurses, I don't want to knock nurses, but some of them may have taken care of a patient that way just because that's how they are, whether somebody was in the room or not, and that's very
right,
good.
but that's all you have to go with, right? You're
Right.
you're just
What you see.
trusting what they're saying, right?
Sure,
and
sure.
and so um like, I know, like, when we would be in the room with her, um you know Stephanie always had a playlist of music that she would listen to, and I would just, I would turn it on, and I would play it, and I'd be reading my Bible, and then I would come and sit next to her bed, and I would lay my hands on her, and I would pray for her, and um, you know, I didn't stop when the nurses came in. They heard me worship. They saw me praying for her. They saw me talking with her. Um, some of them actually stopped and laid hands on her and prayed with me. Um,
Oh,
and you know, it's like you said, it we can be cynical because all this bad stuff was happening to her, and you know, you only can go with what you know and what you see,
sure.
and my experience with the doctors was just very abrupt, abusive for the most part, but the nurses, I found that they were genuinely caring. Now, the one thing I will say is when I pressed them on the medications that they were giving her, I wanted to get an answer out of them about, do you agree with what you're giving her? Do you agree with the protocol and how she's being treated? And every one of them said that this is the doctor's order and I'm just administering the drugs as prescribed and I'm following medical guidelines. That was the pat answer. There was no giving up inside baseball secrets or like,
Yeah.
I'm not down with this, man. I'm not, and I'm just none of that. That didn't happen. And so the final couple of days finally come, and this last doctor, it was my turn to visit Stephanie, and I don't know if he met with my wife first or me, but he took me into a separate room, and he just said, Gerard, we're at 36 days. Um, you really need to consider palliative care, and you guys have to make a decision. Um, he was very matter of fact. Not he wasn't cold. He had to bring some real bad news.
Yeah.
It was his shift, and he's the one that had to say it. And he had his head hanging down, and he wouldn't look at me, and shaking his head, and you could tell. This was like he'd rather be telling somebody, "Hey, there's a turnaround. We got some good stuff to say," and you know, so I asked him. I said, what are you talking about? We got to make a decision." And he said, um, you have to accept the fact that there's no more that we're able to do for her, and that you're gonna have to take her off of um, um, the ventilator, and you're gonna have to take her off of care in the hospital. And so that that didn't quite sting yet. It was when Pam and I had to have the conversation and um, talk to our daughters and our sons.
It's okay.
No, it's not okay.
I mean, take your time. Like,
It's just
this never should have happened, and we know that.
it's just and the thousands of families, you know, the people, Heidi, that and Gail, the people that and all the people that are watching these videos that know someone that this happened to, and specifically what my family is dealing with, and what this video is to share is not about the jab. This is about the protocols that the hospital was utilizing, that the CDC was mandating, that caused our loved ones to die because these drugs were toxic, and the government and the hospitals mandated it. That they legally said, this is how we're going to
Yeah.
provide care. So, you know, whatever you know or believe about whatever you've read or heard, and you're watching this video, you know, this is anecdotal. This is our experience. Um, the Betrayal Project has a lot of testimony. There's there's a lot of evidence
Yep.
that not just um, congressional leaders, but doctors around the country and around the world
Yep.
are bringing to light. And um, do you know, Gail, the name of the attorney that is at The Hague in the Netherlands,
Yeah. That.
bringing
Uh.
a lawsuit against Bill Gates
Yeah.
and against the owner of Pfizer?
Yeah. I
You know what I'm
can't.
talking about?
Yeah, I do know who you're talking about.
So, so for folks that don't understand, you can just Google this on your own, and you know there's there's a lawsuit that these plaintiffs have brought before the world court because it's got to be a civil case. There can't be any criminal liability because of the PERP Act.
Right.
And so, what we're looking for as family members is the same type of accountability
Sure.
that is being presented in the Netherlands before the court there is
Sure.
people have to be held accountable, and you can't have the government protecting pharmaceutical companies
Right.
and hospitals and doctors using protocols that they know are toxic and are going to cause detriment to the
Right.
patient, and then say, uh, well, we have this protection because
Right.
we're trying to help people, all the time knowing what we're giving them is not going to help them.
And people do need to understand that the PrEP Act is actually the PrEP Acts, because it's not just COVID. There's a PrEP Act for flu. There's a PrEP Act for bird flu. There's a PrEP Act now for hantavirus.
Right.
There's a PrEP Act for everything, and it keeps getting extended and extended. And that is immunity, and nobody should have immunity from doing something, wrong. And so and everybody's pointing at each other. The hospitals are pointing at CDC, and CDC is saying, no, we just made recommendations and incentivized.
Right.
They could have used whatever they wanted. And then the doctors are pointing at the administration, and the administration is pointing at the doctors. They're all and we saw that with Grace Shera's trial. They're all pointing fingers at each other, when in reality they're all guilty, including the legislators who could have stopped it,
Yeah.
and need to, you know even if all they did was take these stories and say, yeah, we've investigated it, it happened, and they used the same amount of propaganda, the same amount of money that they used to push the propaganda about ivermectin being horse dewormer and all that crap,
Right.
is if they just used all of that effort in telling America the truth. I mean, did you ever think you would have seen an American democide? I never in a million years would have thought that. You served your country, my husband served our country, and never in a million years did he ever think the country he served, that he wrote a blank check for with his life, that they would try to kill his wife or your daughter.
Right.
That it's a shameful place for us to be in. Um, and so so when so you had to make this hard decision to put her on palliative care, which actually was another bit of money that they get.
Right.
People were, um, and then how long was that? You had to make the decision. You made the decision, and then how did they let you gather the family? What took
Yeah.
place?
It was um, 3 days from the time that the doctor had the conversation with us. And then we we informed our two daughters. We tried to communicate to our estranged daughter, our two
Mm-hmm.
sons in town. We told them, um, our our relatives, um, the donor transplant team came in and met with us. Initially, they were very encouraged. They thought that Stephanie's organs were viable, that they were going to be able to um, salvage her heart, her cornea, her kidneys, her liver. Um, and so, the beginning of the day, we had that conversation with them. And um, later in the day, they came back to us and said that unfortunately, because of COVID, that it had gotten in too many of her organs and only one of her kidneys was salvageable. And so right away, we're like, okay, you didn't know at the beginning of the day that COVID was toxic in her tissue and her heart and her all the organs, right? And the whole time she was there, they never complained about her heart. They did was tell us how strong her heart was, how strong her heart rate was,
Mm-hmm.
EKGs, echocardiogram, everything about her heart was healthy. No deficit at all. They went out of their way to tell us how strong her heart was. Of every organ, that was the one that was the strongest. Of course, because of the remdesivir, her kidneys were suffering. They made mention of that. Toxicity in her liver because of the sepsis. Her heart, no problem. So, so then we have that, you know, euphoria of okay, her organs are going to be donated, and part of Stephanie's going to, be able to help other people, and then you're deflated, and then you're told only one organ is salvageable, and so then the palliative care team came to us, and they had a set up a meeting for us uh, using a Zoom meeting so that we could have like a memorial in the room. Um, my sons, my daughters, uh, Pam and I, and then over Zoom, we were able to provide a link and a password to family that were out of state, out of country, and they could meet on the Zoom with us, and then we would just have an opportunity, for them to see Stephanie one last time, and just everybody would be able to share their thoughts about her, and so that was um, probably about a 3 hour meeting, and uh, we had um, our close circle was obviously my sons and my daughters, and my two cousins, and a really good friend of ours um, out in Arizona, um, Pam's mom, and one of her sisters, and we had some deacons from our church, some of Stephanie's close coworkers, um, and so those last 3 days, um, I finally got the patient advocates to agree that look, we're gonna want to have last rites. We want more than just us to see her, and we're not doing this only one, two at a time thing. We've got a number of people that want to be with her, and so they agreed. And so then they started letting three at a time go up, and So those last 3 days, we probably had like 8 hours filled with, the clergy and deacons and our close inner circle friends at church
Hmm.
that work with Stephanie and my daughters, um, and, and they came and um, they you know they were able to see Stephanie, and um, real sweet time, but real hard for everybody, and, and so her last final day, they made preparations. Uh, my wife and my daughters were taking turns. Um, 70's temperature was elevated that last day, and obviously it was due to the infection. And they took turns wiping her body down and keeping her cool, and bathing her feet, washing her legs, and uh, just cleaning her. And um, my daughters were um, my wife was 70 had pretty long hair, and so they were salvaging her hair, um, because my wife had um, a ministry she was sending Stephanie's hair
Yeah.
to make braids and wigs for people that are
Kids.
going through cancer.
Yeah.
So they did that, and that was, you're moving toward like finality, um, and so then the doctors came in and they explained to us what was going to happen, as they taking her off the ventilator, and the sounds that we were going to hear from her lungs, and uh, that she would uh, have about an hour and a half of life after being taken off of the ventilator. And so um, now we weren't waiting till the last moment to, like, all give her a hug. That was going on for like the last 3 days. You know,
Right.
my sons and my daughters are just laying over her body and weeping, and just very intense, right? And so they take her off the ventilator, and um, very respectful, um, and she's off all the equipment now, and they they told us where they were going to be taking her, and that we were going to follow with them and take her down to basically the operating room, and that we would have about a half an hour to sit with her, and there would be a monitor there, and we would um, be able to watch her final moments of life. And so they have this uh, walk of honor that they provide for the patients that were in ICU. And so we get Stephanie out into the hallway, and this hallway is fairly long hallway. Parkview Regional is a trauma hospital.
Hmm.
It's a long ICU hall, and it's lined both sides with clinicians, doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, janitors, all kinds of people, right? And we get out in the hallway, and my wife is at Stephanie's feet, leading. My boys and my girls are on the side holding the gurney, and I'm at her head. And these people, there were very few of them that we noticed that had interaction with Stephanie. And so these are all just people that work on the floor that would have known about Stephanie like they know about all the other patients.
Hmm.
And like uncontrollable sobbing. Like, I'm thinking to myself, they don't know my daughter, and I'm thinking to myself, what this is about? This is their soul realizing what the hell has happened to people.
Yeah.
They were mourning maybe over the fact that they realized, and it was just another person leaving who is dead now. Um, Maybe some genuinely because they got to interact with Stephanie and were caring for her, but it was just very surreal. And so you get to the elevator, get downstairs, they get Stephanie draped, and they've got a drape about 6 feet high and just have her head and shoulders exposed to us. And we got two little um, chairs that were able to um, sit next to her, and just like a half an hour, and we're watching the monitor, and you can see her heart rate and her breathing rate, and it's slowing, and it's just like there's like literal clock. And so my wife was with her first, and you're just like, I mean, this is my wife's baby. She carried Stephanie full term. Stephanie was born. She lived 34 years, and now she's going to go on to eternity. And I had my opportunity right at the end, and kissing her and telling her how much I love her. And I told her, that I said that, Steph, you fought really well and you did great. I said, yeah, it's time. It was okay. She could go see Jesus, and she was good. So we met with my sons and my daughters, and uh, we met the next day, and we had dinner, and we pulled out videos, pictures, and just had fellowship, and just laughed, and thought about Stephanie, and here we are today, 6 years later.
We're incredibly sorry. I'm incredibly sorry for what happened to her and what you all had to go through. I I would like, if you can, I would love for you to tell people the impact that this has had, because it has been, been 6 years since the whole COVID pandemic, but it's been over 4 years, right? Over 4 years since Stephanie was killed in that hospital. Tell people what impact that's had on your life, your
Well,
family.
we're different. We're changed people. I mean, she was part of our soul, our family. You know, you're you're just you're different. It's just nothing you can comprehend. You can't reason with what happened. You have no accountability. You have no answers. You're in this freaking psycho babble bullcrap world,
Hmm.
and there's just like, like you said earlier, those of us that chose not to take the jab, you know, we were told, you know, on numerous occasions, you know, by Anthony Fauci, by Joe Biden, by lots of doctors that, you know, that the people that were unvaccinated are the cause of the continued
Yeah.
pandemic, you know, and, you know, we all decided, those of us that didn't take the jab, I'll just speak for myself, but, you know, when they came out and publicly made the comments, you know, Fauci
Hmm.
and Dr. Burks and Mike
Yeah.
Pence, that they did communicate to people that, you know, we want to let everybody know that these are experimental vaccines and that people have a right to make a choice. And so for me and my family, you know, that I mean, I had, like I said, you know, I went to college, I got a degree, you know, in associate applied science and surge tech, and passed a hard national certification, had a little bit of medical training, and I'm like, hell no,
Right.
you didn't take an experimental. That word experimental, what does that mean? So for us, it was an absolute hard no, and we were gonna, you know, just listen to people that we were following who were treating people and would use common sense, reason, logic, critical thinking, and that was going to be where our heads were at. And you know, you're going day after day, and you're, at least for me, you know, you're not. I'm not at peace at all about this because it's just um, there's no closure. You have nobody
Yeah.
that's like able to be held accountable because they got this just stupid freaking promise that we're protected, you know, and there's nothing that people can do to us. You know, the freaking statute of limitations just ended on Fauci, like what, the middle of May, and it's
Yeah.
like he's got a 10-year pre-pardon. Who pardons someone that's never been
Right.
tried, convicted, arrested, or even charged? Who does that? You know, we just we live in a very uh, we live in a very evil time. There are people making decisions that are choosing to kill people for profit,
Yeah, exactly.
and and this is not something that, you know, we've ever dealt with, because, you know, we know that, you know, incidences in the past in human history where people's health and lives were violated against their will, um, for you know, political reasons, during
Yeah,
war, you
exactly.
know, all those kind of things. And we know that on any given day, any number of terrible things can happen to any one of us, and
Right.
you just don't wake up with a cold and say, I'm really having trouble breathing. I'm going to the doctor.
Right.
I want to get treatment, and expect that they're going to kill you.
I mean, right, exactly. And I think people need to realize that. So, like, that, especially when they're like, some people really still believe that COVID was super deadly. Yes, it was gain of function and it attacked in a way that normal, that's something that wasn't modified gain of function bioweapon wouldn't do. But there was also a very simple effective, 99% effective, safe treatment,
Right.
ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and budesonide, that would stop the viral load. And so um, the replication would not have happened. And the first time people went to a doctor, he said, "Oh yeah," or even telemed. If you could get if you could get ivermectin over the counter, like we can now in Texas, if you could back then, none of this none of this would have happened. And I mean, people, even myself, I did not know that you could have it ahead of time, that you could have all of these drugs ahead of time. But you can bet your butt we have it now. every I keep it, I take it prophylactically, because that's how simple it it was. And doctors, there, I don't believe in 2021 and 2022 that there were any doctors who did not know that, and or nurses who did not understand how budesonide and ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine and vitamins work. Maybe in 2020 they could have been snowed and confused, but 2021, 2022, and beyond, no excuses. There were enough whistleblowers that came forward. I want to So, a couple things in closing that I want to just cover with you, and I know this has gone long, and I am sorry for that, but
Don't be sorry.
uh,
I'm
there's
good. I'm fine. Thank you.
yeah, it's a she 30 over 30 days. There's a lot to tell, right? Um, so we talked about the impacts, and we talked about everything that had gone wrong. Um, I want to remind people that one of the most important things you can do to protect yourself now is to make sure that you go to idonotconsentform.com and have those forms filled out and notarized and ready to use if you ever have to have a surgery or go to the hospital or whatever. Laura Bartlett, Dr. Bartlett's sister,
Right.
Laura Bartlett, has the hospital hostage helpline that she womans, not mans. She
Yeah.
woman. And 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 this form was a hospital insider, whistleblower insider had come up with this form, and it's effective, and we've seen it effective. We've seen it work. It changes the way that they treat you in a hospital, and how they, and one of the things on there is about budesonide, and so, and not, and the shot and all of that stuff. So it's really important to have that, because you never know. I mean, I always say, I haven't been to a hospital. I wouldn't go to a hospital. I haven't been to a doctor since they tried to kill me. But you never know. You could be in an accident. You could be whatever. So please use that form as directed. So that's one thing I do want to say. She always says, "Be prepared, not scared."
Right.
Another thing I want people to know is, I want them to share this interview. Share, if they have a story, tell it. Tell your story too. Add your story to the voices. The real stories pod. We have two podcasts at Betrayal Project USA. We've got the Nation Betrayed, where we talk about a lot of topics, but the Real Stories podcast, it's very important that real stories come out, because that's what's going to make people believe when they start to see the pattern. In every story you watch, there's a pattern, and it's out there in the Deadly Hospital playbook, but there's a pattern. And that's how you get them to recognize that these are medical crimes, when they see and acknowledge the pattern.
Right.
And so that's very important. Heidi, do you have any questions before I ask the final question?
Um, I don't have any questions, but I just want to remind everybody, to go to our website and to download, the hospital playbook, right? And share it everywhere, because the protocols are still in place. They're still killing people, and we need to, bring awareness to the nation.
Yeah, we need to bring so much awareness and use that I do not consent form so that we put Laura's hotline out of business because she's, you know, she's still kind of busy on that. Um, so
Yeah.
my last, yeah, exactly, because it's happening. My last question to you then is, can you tell us one of your, it could be one or two, one of your favorite memories about Stephanie?
Yeah, boy, that's wow. Um, um, so probably um, when we're out in California, she's probably, let me see, like 10, 11 years old, and um, my wife has, she's working a job at a church locally doing daycare, and then she has part time daycare at home, and so all of my four daughters at the time were, obviously they're younger and they're all at the house. Um, but Stephanie was um, uh, like uh, a mini Pam. She just like really would model um, my wife caring for the kids and stuff, and not that my other daughters didn't, but just you could see it was like Stephanie really loved it. Like when uh, her younger sisters were born, you know, uh, it was like, well, I got another little baby. I can move around in the stroller, and I can put diapers on her, and I could feed her and bottle feed her, and just you know, she just always was very present, and you know, um, any child in the neighborhood, um, she was always like, play hopscotch with them, jump rope, helping them read, um, roller skate, bike ride, singing music. Just all she wanted to do was laugh. Stephanie just loved to laugh, and um, like I said, she had a laugh that she would giggle so hard that you had to laugh at her laugh. It was just really it was enjoyable, just very 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 entertaining, and an older more recent um, probably would be just some of the photos that you see like there with my granddaughter, um, and um, that young granddaughter. Her name is Jasmine, and when uh, um, when any of my sons would come over with the kids, um, Stephanie was always, putting a game plan together. What kind of games we going to play? What am I going to bake for them? What kind of foods am I going to make? And Stephanie wasn't about just like, we're going to have chicken nuggets and French fries. No, she would like prepare like real special meal, and try to see can we get you guys to eat something different other than chicken McNuggets and French fries. And so she had no problem trying to introduce stuff to them, and you know that didn't always work, right? A lot of the time it just came down to, okay, we're just going to have some popsicles and and maybe some fruit, but she just always very very much wanted them to know that when you came to Aunt Stephanie's house, you were the focus of attention, and she made everybody feel that way. I'll send you guys the link for her celebration of life. And when you hear the testimony of the other folks that you know she just made everyone feel very special and important and loved. Um, and that's just how she lived her life. My son Josh, my older son's Thomas, my younger son's Josh. Um, when when Stephanie, the last couple of days before she passed, uh, Josh and his wife were pregnant, and they honored Stephanie, and they named their newest daughter Chloe Stephanie
Oh,
Augustine.
sweet.
And so that was that was really nice. I mean, yeah, Stephanie was she is I she's alive. She's with the Lord in heaven. That's just a fact if you're a disciple of Jesus.
Yep.
And no matter what pain and agony and angst we go through, and what doubts and questions come up in our mind, we fight and struggle. I do, with God's sovereignty. And I think about the commandment of for like my children, always would tell them, obviously, you're teaching them, um, and one of the commandments that God has given you guys with a promise, if you honor mom and dad, God promises it'll be well with you and you'll live a long life, you
Yeah.
know. And I'm like, God, what is up with that promise? It's like, where's the long life? And
It's
it's
eternal life.
it's just it's just the complexity of God's promise didn't stop. It didn't negate anything. It still means what it says. We
Right.
live in a fallen world, and God gives free will to people, and unfortunately people make bad choices, and we run smack dab right in the middle of life, and those consequences that other people make, we unfortunately um, are recipients of that. And that happens not just for those of us that experience this loss with our loved ones, but tragedy happens to people every day, and it's just a different level of tragedy. And like I said earlier, um, I appreciate you ladies. Thank you for being patient with me during this interview. Thank you for the Betrayal Project. Thank you for giving me a voice. Thank you for uh, the opportunity to be part of this community, because um, this is the only outlet that um, myself and my family have, that we can
Sure.
really um, have um, kinship with families because of what happened, that
Yeah.
I can't outside with other people that haven't experienced it. They they they're not, they don't understand it. And the vaccine injured, and people that were killed because of that, they have their own experience that's unlike ours, right?
Right.
It's different. And this is much needed. And we need to pray. um, we really need uh, God to move the hearts of people in leadership, government, that Senator Johnson can get the hearing he needs, so
Mm-hmm.
that the testimonies can go forward from our families, so that investigations can be made, our testimonies can be archived,
Yep.
they can be read,
Into
and
the record. Yep.
people in our country and around the world will know that there was great deception, there was great evil, and if people think that the PrEP Act is going to protect them, unfortunately, there's a clock that ticks in eternity, and God is the
Yeah,
one that's going to judge us all.
exactly.
So be
You
prepared,
cannot
because if not in this world, then
next.
in God's time, there will come accountability.
That's right. That's right. There's no such thing as no accountability forever. It ju- justice will justice will happen in God's time. Well, I want to thank you for having the moral courage to tell your daughter's story publicly. We are going to make sure that she is not forgotten, and that that your voice is heard as to tell her story, and make sure that just that we get you connected with the entire community, because together, I mean, together we're stronger. Together we are much stronger, and that's how we will get accountability, is by all coming forward together. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take an army, and that's what we're going to be. So I appreciate you. Thank you, Heidi, also for being on this interview. And I appreciate y'all, and everybody share this video far and wide. Thank you.
Thank you.